we had kids a couple years after we got married, but she went from a professional who was just doing amazing in the workforce with a ton of friends to being a mother of a young daughter. And that was exciting. And then 2 years later, we thought, let's have another. And my wife started to change. She
Mhm.
went from this joyful, fun woman to a mom, and I'll even say it, a mom with no help from me. I had no idea how to be a dad. I barely knew how to be a husband.
Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your marriage without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired and taken care of and special, even if your relationship feels hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about 3 traits to attract your husband effortlessly. Do you ever wonder what the husband thought about his wife practicing the 6 intimacy skills in their marriage? Today, you're going to find out because my guest, Farron, is going to tell us his side of the story as part of our Man Panel series. So get ready to hear the male perspective on what makes men attracted to their wives and what makes him want to be her hero. That's coming up. But first, let's talk about these 3 traits to attract your husband effortlessly, just like you did in the beginning of your relationship without having to do anything special, right? I mean, maybe you put on makeup or did your hair or dressed a certain way, but he was looking for you because he just couldn't wait to be with you. He was always pulling you close because he was just that attracted, really, no matter what you looked like. Let's face it, right? And if that stops, it can really make you feel unattractive. I remember that. It was awful. It can make you feel ugly, which feels terrible. And you might think that it's because you're not physically attractive to him, but I've got great news for you. Attracting your husband effortlessly is not really about how you look. Feeling desired and adored, it's completely possible. And if you cultivate these 3 traits, it's not just possible, it's inevitable that you will attract him without having to beg or feel desperate, which are not attractive qualities, right? It's like that joke from Albert Brooks in the movie Broadcast News, where he said, wouldn't this be a great world if insecurity and desperation made us more attractive? Like if needy was a turn on? I mean, that would be a great world, right? But that's only funny because that's not how it works at all. I know because I tried that with my husband and it just made me resistible. But here's what works to become an irresistible magnet to your man without having to go to any effort. The first trait is to be delighted, not delightful, but delighted. I mean, the guest today, the from the man panel, is going to talk about what happened for him when his wife became joyful as a result of practicing the 6 intimacy skills. And I think, I mean, I can speak for myself. That's how I want my husband to feel about me. And I think that's how we all want our husbands to feel about us. Your husband's dream girl that he fell in love with, the lead in his movie, she was happy, right? She was joyful. Are you still joyful? Because this is an opportunity to amp up your attraction factor. This is a trait that will attract your husband to you effortlessly. I mean, models are moody sometimes, right, in those pictures, but consider that you were most attractive to your husband when it was a happy time for both of you. You were smiling and laughing. This is how you erase desperation and neediness. It's by becoming genuinely happy. And if that sounds challenging, it can be, especially if you're completely committed to your misery like I was. It was hard for me to think about being able to get happy. But what helped me realize I could snap out of that was having the structure of doing 3 things a day just to make myself happy, just for frivolous fun, just making that the priority. I would make a to-do list and put that on there and just give myself a check mark. I love giving myself a check mark when I've made myself happy. And it was all in service of having a great marriage. The second quality that will attract your husband to you effortlessly is expecting the best. Expecting the best from him, trusting him. Those are exciting, alluring qualities and traits. They're the essence of respect, which is the best aphrodisiac on the planet. Everyone loves to look in the mirror of someone else's eyes and have it reflected back to them that they expect them to be successful, that they think they're great. And you could say, well, that's not realistic, but feeling someone's trust does bring out the best in them. I know I experience this myself. I feel a fierce responsibility to the students who study with me because I don't want to let them down. They trust me. They believe that I will succeed with supporting them and helping them. And I fall in love with them all the time. It's the best beauty cream that never came in a jar is trusting someone. But if it did come in a jar, I would definitely buy more jars of that than I do of eye cream. And I mean, I buy a lot of eye cream. I'm a big fan. John, the other day was planning a trip to Las Vegas for us for our anniversary. And he was kind of telling me what he was doing. And he was talking about the airfare price. And it was so cheap. It was really cheap. And then by the time he booked the flights, the airfare was much more than that because of course it was because that's what they do, right? It's like cheap flight and then you add on, like being able to sit in a chair while you're on the plane and then it costs more, right? So by the time he booked the flights, it was much more. And I questioned it. I was like, well, what happened? I thought it was going to be so much less. And it was so disrespectful. And it was unattractive. And I could tell immediately, you can kind of get that feedback from him right away that that was unattractive. I felt it. And it's a small amount of resistibility that I created compared to how we used to live around here, compared to how it used to be before. There's a lot of emotional safety. There's a general culture of respect around here. So this doesn't happen too much. But anyway, in that moment, I just felt like, yeah, that wasn't so attractive. And so I apologized for being disrespectful and not trusting him that, of course, he's getting us the best deal, but also the best experience that we can have on this romantic getaway that he's taking me on. And that brings me to the third trait that will attract your husband to you effortlessly, and that is being accountable. There is nothing more attractive and vulnerable and endearing than admitting that you were critical or controlling or disrespectful. It's vulnerable, and vulnerability creates connection and fascination. And I would notice this with my certified coaches, the women who have trained with me and are now, a really big part of the mission to end world divorce alongside me. We have these storytelling sessions where we get together and we share very honestly about the interactions in our marriages especially where we fell short of our ideals for ourselves with practicing the 6 intimacy skills. And instead of being respectful or vulnerable, we chose control or criticism or disrespect. I mean, none of us has become a saint so far as we know. And so what comes out in these storytelling sessions is like confessions, really, about how one coach insisted that her husband sell their investments right then, and the schism that that caused, right? Or another coach was talking about the years that she spent emasculating her husband for the way he managed their finances and how it's still making her feel hopeless that he'll ever be capable or willing to manage them. And another coach talked about how she told her grown son what he should do with his day off. All right. So these true stories, they just are so endearing. They bind us together because although they aren't proud moments that we're sharing, they are accountable. We own our part of the breakdown with when we're together with each other, and it's endearing. My favorite people on the planet have this attractive quality. And the coaches and I, especially, we just love each other because we share these embarrassing experiences. And I want to spend the rest of my life hanging out with them. And isn't that the way you want your husband to feel about you? So, how can you be more attractive to your husband? Consider experimenting with accountability. Maybe it's going to be an apology. Maybe it's the softness of just admitting you're over your head or you're feeling needless emotional turmoil. What can you admit that's a little hard to admit? It will attract your husband to you effortlessly. Does it feel like you can fix everything except for your marriage? For the last 2 decades, I've had the privilege of helping thousands of women create more connection, passion, and deep conversations in their marriages. I even wrote the book on becoming the empowered wife. Ultimately, I'm on a mission to end world divorce. That's why I'm hosting a free 5-day Adored Wife challenge to help you repair and refresh your marriage fast. Best of all, your man doesn't even need to participate. Over those 5 days, you're going to learn the daily action that you were taking, probably subconsciously, that might be killing your intimacy. And I'm going to show you a small but powerful change that you can make today that will supercharge the passion and the connection. Plus, the simple magic cheat phrase that will completely shift your man's perspective. And I'm going to show you why your selflessness might be putting your marriage at risk. Plus, I'm going to show you the 4 indispensable elements of a happy relationship and how to get them. This free event only happens once a year, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. All you have to do to participate is go to lauradoyle.org/challenge and register and save your spot. That's lauradoyle.org/challenge. Go right now, save your spot. And I can't wait to see you at the free 5-day Adored Wife Challenge. Do you ever wonder what the husband thought about his wife practicing the 6 intimacy skills in their marriage? Well, today you're going to find out because my guest, Farron, is going to tell us his side of the story as part of our Man Panel series. Get ready to hear the male perspective on what makes men attracted to their wives and want to be her hero. Farron, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So, can you give us a little background about what the breakdowns that were happening in your marriage? What was going on?
Yeah. So I married young. I was 21 when I got married. I was young enough to be able to get married, but not rent a car on our honeymoon. And when you find love that young, it's exciting, and the whole world feels like it's against you at times because you can't afford rent and life is hard. But when you think you found the one, you are committed to make it work. And it was so exciting to be young and in love. And I guess I would just say that it was totally worth it. And I'm thrilled that we got married young. We had kids a few years after that, and life seemed to be going amazing. But my wife was, I guess probably the best way to say it is more educated than I am, still smarter than I am, and had more people skills than I do. And I always wondered how I would lead a woman like that. How do you take a woman who is better than you at everything and somehow make your marriage better by you being in it? And I'm not saying I came to the marriage as a failure. I'm saying I came to the marriage, I would even say at a deficit by comparison to her skills and her life.
Wow.
And so how am I going to make it better? Why? I don't know. I don't know how I tricked her into marrying me, but it worked. And she stuck with me. And so we had kids a couple years after we got married, but she went from a professional who was just doing amazing in the workforce with a ton of friends to being a mother of a young daughter. And that was exciting. And then 2 years later, we thought, let's have another. And my wife started to change. She
Mhm.
went from uh, this joyful, fun woman to a mom, and I'll even say it, a mom with no help from me. I had no idea how to be a dad. I barely knew how to be a husband.
Mhm.
Um, and when I say that, I mean, I had no idea how selfish I was as a husband. And when you add children into that, it's like all of the sudden looking into a mirror and going, oh, I don't want to do that. And then realizing they don't want to do it either. They're
Mhm.
just married to you. And so when you talk about like a life imbalance, I was working, trying to provide for my family, which is commendable. And I think men should do that. I think it's awesome. Get a job, stay employed, help out. I was probably working 50 to 60 hours a week, and she was a stay-at-home mom, which was a blessing. But when you're a stay-at-home mom to young children, you don't find a lot of satisfaction talking to kids 2 and under. So we
Oh.
got a 2 year old, 3 year old, and we have a baby. And so there's sleepless nights. There's been 4 years of diapers at this point. It's just, now the kids are 2 and 4, and I've been working endlessly, tirelessly. But I've been coming home to somebody who's been working tirelessly in a very different way. And it changed who she was, just like me working 50 or 60 hours and becoming a dad after becoming a husband, feeling the pressures of life to succeed, to pay rent, to do all of the things. It really changed who I was, but it really changed who she was. And there is a point where you wake up and you go, who is this next to me? Um, they're not as fun. I'm sure I'm not as fun. I'm positive I'm not as fun as I was. Things are serious now. We have bills to pay. We have diapers to always change. The house is always a mess when you have children because they're just learning hands on. And my wife went from being my kid's mom to kind of being my mom, and not in like some terrible way, just in a she had to care for me because I was working all the time. She had to care for the kids. I don't know when she slept. I often tell people that my wife was a single mother for the first 4 or 5 years of our marriage or of our kids' lives, because she was doing all of it, everything, everything at home, everything. And I was working, bringing in and paying for things. That's not companionship. That's not what you signed up for when you got married. That's not even a real rewarding relationship. It's a So she married a paycheck and I married a homemaker, and neither one of us signed up for that.
Mhm.
And we drifted apart, and I would say we drifted apart. Um, it's super common. But what I would say is that what makes it worse is when I was so prideful, I don't think I saw it. I don't think I saw the signs of drifting apart. I don't think I recognized how vulnerable I was by not having an emotional companion. I had wonderful mentors in my life say, oh, pay attention to your marriage, pay attention to your marriage. My parents were married 50 years. I was super fortunate to have a great example in front of me. And I thought I was paying attention to my marriage. I actually thought I knew my kids too. But knowing what color they like, what foods they eat, that's not knowing your children. And I was absent from their lives because I was working so much. And my wife and I were emotionally absent for each other more and more. Publicly, it looked like we had everything together, but we didn't. And when you have a situation like that that's prolonged for years and years, I guess probably the best way to say it is I was extremely vulnerable for unfaithfulness. And I started finding emotional companionship outside of my marriage. I thought I fell in love with this other person. Um, And this is stuff, I guess I'll be honest with you, this is stuff I said I would never do, ever. I'm not even interested in cheating on my wife. That's not at all remotely a part of my character.
Yeah.
But I found myself emotionally attached to somebody else. And what is so common is exactly what happened. It turned physical, and unfaithfulness became extremely real. And I just tell people, I completely crashed our life in one of the most inexcusable ways. It wasn't justified. There are so many men that say, yeah, well, my wife didn't pay attention to me. Mine did. There are many men that would say, well, my needs weren't being met at home. Um, I don't even think I was aware of that. I don't think I was aware of that. So when all of this comes out in the messiest time of life, um, we just had wise people say, walk slowly, don't do anything too fast. She had please don't misunderstand me. She had every reason to leave me. I had broken all trust. Um, when you betray somebody at a level like that, how do you rebuild? So now I had somebody who was a mom and a mom to my children, and her role switched from my wife to a mom and still my wife. But now you add into that infidelity and the break of trust. And you go from somebody who has had to control everything in their life for their children's sake. So, schedules, a good mom always has their kids on schedules. This is what protects the only sanity they have left. And I got to be real clear. I can talk about this now because it's been about 15 years without crying. So that is why I'm able to just look at you and talk to you. But I cry all the time about this for over a decade, and telling the story still isn't easy. And my point is that, hold on, my point is simple. My wife had every reason to not trust me, and her whole life was structured for children, and I became untrustable. And so, to protect her schedule, like she did with the kids, and to protect herself, she began to take control of other things in life that would help her feel safe. So, my wife wanted to feel safe, and I broke that. So, you can heal a marriage, and I wouldn't know how. Ours was. We trusted in God, we trusted in others, and we walked slowly. And God did what I would just call a miracle. It wasn't something, I don't have a pathway forward for people. Every single um, awful unfaithfulness in a marriage has a completely different path of healing. I don't believe I can prescribe any pathway forward for people other than to say, walk slowly, cling to God, and cling to others, and try to find safety. They're all so different. But my wife wanted to feel safe. That's all she wanted, was to be safe. But in doing so, this is so weird how it creeps in. The weirdest fights we were having that we didn't even have before. But she was doing all the chores. I already told you all that, that she was running a house. So I'm unemployed, depressed for years, trying to figure out how to make it through. So I start doing some chores around the house, but I'm doing them wrong. And there is a wrong way to load the dishwasher, and maybe even a wrong way to fold towels. Like, I believe all of that, but I couldn't win. I couldn't win. I was exhausted by her. And I'm the one that needed all the forgiveness. Like, don't get me wrong. So, am I just ungrateful that this woman's still with me? We're still having joyful moments. Don't, it wasn't miserable all the time. And if we're honest with ourselves, it's never really awful all the time or wonderful all the time. These are the weird fairy tales we believe from movies or the social media. The reality is it's always ups and downs, right? We always have good times and we have bad times. Going through this healing phase that took years, it brought changes that I definitely wasn't grateful for. I created needs for my wife to control her safety while I re-earned my trust, while I recommitted to the things that really matter in a marriage. And while I also rediscovered how arrogant and prideful I was, I had no idea. Um, and through some amazing men that showed me the way forward, I was just broken for years. So my wife now has, I call it, three children, two daughters and me. As I'm trying to figure out who I am, what I'm doing, everything's crashed. We had to move into my parents' house. What I thought would be 3 months turned into 3 years. Um, that's embarrassing. It's not the plan, right? I was successful. This is terrible. And then you realize, oh, so your pride is hurt, but you really crashed your marriage and you broke your family. And you got to be honest with your kids about why you moved into their grandparents' house. Um, so this rebuilding phase came with a ton of new rules that I didn't sign up for, but it was all consequences. I don't know how else to put it. My wife's responses and reactions were completely natural and probably what any woman would do as they try to rebuild life after a complete betrayal. Just awful. And public. My unfaithfulness wasn't private. It was because of what it was extremely public. So my wife is humiliated, my wife is embarrassed. Um, destroyed a lot of people's lives because of it, but I definitely destroyed hers. And so I would
Aaron,
just,
this is incredible. This
well,
your accountability is extraordinary and your humility. And I'm just hanging on your every word because this is rare that, you know, this is so rare. Where do you get to hear this kind of an account of what's happened in your marriage, this kind of a breakdown? And I just want to say how moved I am by your honesty, and it's very endearing. I'm just and I know you're talking about a big mistake and your vulnerability that you had going into this infidelity. And I just appreciate that you're just a mere mortal man, right? And that's what all of us are. We're just mere mortals. So I just want to thank you for
um,
how deep you're going. And I didn't want to interrupt at all because this is great. So yeah. But anyway, I'm just really struck and impressed by your
well,
humility.
I had so many people that I hurt that their questions were, how could you do this? How could you do this? So you have to ask yourself, how did this happen? And that's the only reason why we're on the other side is because I actually believe that the reasons why it happened were because of my absolute arrogance and pride. And I just thought, if you think you are above failure on all these things, you're not protecting yourself from all these things. And it wasn't so many affairs you can look at and infidelity and unfaithfulness, and you can say, this is this person's fault. And you can identify somebody that's just a villain. It wasn't my wife. And so all of her responses and all of the things that happened were what I would just call natural consequences of if you break something that was so holy and sacred and you break it and you're trying to put it back together with mercy and grace and forgiveness and trust. And how do you re-earn those things? And and you're not going for figuring out how to tolerate each other again. You're going for healing, like actual healing and wholeness that can only come from a God that puts things back together, is my perspective. And I just want to say that when it's broken that bad, any response, so she could have left me, that would have been fine. We could have started over. She had every reason to, but she didn't. And so putting everything not back together because things will never be the way that they were. But I actually did not know that they could be better. And then some shift happened several years ago. Um, I am a type of person, I guess I would say entrepreneurial. So I start things all the time, and I get momentum, and I'm also a functionalist. So once it gets functionally there, I'm done. I'm moving on to the next thing. And if you have a house and that is who you are, then what you have is a ton of unfinished projects. And my wife, this is when I think I noticed this, there's something's going on. Um, it was her birthday, and I was like, our laundry room is disgusting. I mean, it was gross. It was, it needed a major overhaul. And I was like, that's what I'll do. Right. Of all, it's sort of like, I gotta be honest with you, looking, even just saying that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's like buying a wife a vacuum for Christmas. Probably not what she wanted. Yeah, okay. Probably laundry room wasn't the best idea, but I was small and manageable. And I was like, I'm gonna do this thing. And normally my wife would be like, don't start. Is this really what you should be doing? Should you start another project? Because the reality is oftentimes my wife is the one that finishes these projects if I start them. So I started this laundry room project, and she showed up not to help. And funny, we don't work that well together. We're learning to. We're learning to be a team, but we weren't for so long. And she did the lion's share of all of the work and cleanup and healing and all of the things that we weren't a good team. I would do things my way. She would do things her way. We would agree on the outcome, but we had completely different paths, almost like we were two different people. Go figure. And then so I started this laundry room project, but she didn't show up to help, which is probably good because that would just lead to some arguments. And I picked everything out and I just did it. But she kept showing up every day, telling me how great it was, which is weird. I got to be honest with you. That was suspicious. Not suspicious enough for me to check her phone. Like I wasn't like thinking, what's happening? But it was weird because she showed up as an encourager, but she said weird things to me that caught me off guard. She said things like, I can't wait to see this when it's done. I believe it's going to be good. Something like that. Right? Normally, what I would get is not that. And she wasn't saying, get this done. She was saying that she believed that what I was doing would turn out well when it was finished, which is not the same as saying, is this ever going to finish? Or probably what she was thinking is, when are you done so that I have to take over and finish this? I don't have time for this. And she wouldn't be wrong saying any of that. She really wouldn't. Like, I'm terrible at this stuff. Look around our house, there's all these things I started months ago. So she's not wrong. And I can't even say I've changed. So what happened that my wife showed up in a kind way, in an encouraging way? So I was suspicious. And then she would say things. So if you have kids, and we have teenagers at this point, and life is hard, I think it's probably okay to share. One of my daughters went through severe mental illness, and didn't have tangible hope until the last year. And so we thought she would die all the time. We thought, so every night, my daughter would, got two daughters. My oldest is going off to college, and my youngest was just a teenager right in the middle of high school. And every night she wanted to die. So my wife and my daughter would sleep in her room so that one of them, they would take turns, which is unfair to the older sibling, right? That you have to parent your younger sibling. And it's so hard on my wife. But you surrender that you're not in control, and my daughter might actually die, and we're trying to get help. Well, there's so hard to navigate the mental health system if you don't know things and you don't know people, and that was us. And so it was so hard. And during this time, my wife is, instead of, so you're trying to prioritize still having a marriage, and you're raising children, and it's super hard because there's some medical conditions, and we're barely making rent, and things are just hard. And so my wife starts using, instead of, so we would have we live by the Google family calendar. I don't make money for promoting that. I'm just saying, when you have children, life and works and everything else, you have to be a million places. And when you share cars, you definitely have to know where you're
Yeah.
going. So we use that tool to organize our life, and we would put date nights or something on there, right, to be intentional, because that's what somebody told us we should do, was be intentional. So I try, but it was hard. And instead of doing it that old way, being intentional and forceful of we do need to prioritize time. But my wife would say something different. She would say something like, I would love to spend time with you, which is so different than we haven't gone out in. When I hear we haven't gone out in a while, I'm thinking of all the reasons why we haven't gone out in a while. Well, there's a bunch of reasons why we haven't gone out in a while.
Yeah.
But her actual point wasn't, I want to go out. Her actual point was exactly what she really said, which was, I would love to spend time with you, which means, to me, it means, oh, I'm wanted. Make time to be with somebody that wants to be with you is completely different than, if you could make more money, we could go out. If our daughter wasn't sick, then we could do more stuff. She wasn't saying any of that. She was saying, I would love to spend time with you. And that was a completely different way of saying the same thing. Again, very suspicious. I don't know what's happening. Um, and there was more. There were so many things going on in our life that things were hard, but my wife and I were growing closer together instead of further apart. And I couldn't figure it out for quite a while. And then one day she was basically, so her words were, oh, some lady at church said, my wife said I guess she asked my wife how she was doing. How are you doing? And my wife says, oh, marriage is hard. And it is, especially if you're married to me. So all of that is, parenting is hard, marriage is hard. And I would have agreed and been like, yep, that's okay. And this lady said to my wife, I used to believe that too, which is offensive if you're in some frustrating thing. So what happy pill is this lady taking? Why is she happy? And then somehow they started talking about this book, and my wife's like, well, I guess I'll read this book. And I didn't know any of this. And my wife had read this book, and it turns out it's your book. And I didn't know any of this for years, maybe years. Maybe. I'm not sure. Don't hold me to that timeline. I'm pretty clueless on lots of things, so that wouldn't be surprising. But I didn't know, but she had just started practicing the principles in this thing. And when I say practicing, I was watching her use different words, different approaches to our relationship that somehow I was responding to way better. And nothing changed outwardly. Our kid is still sick. We still need money to pay bills. Why is my wife nicer? I would even say this is the woman that I wanted to marry. Like, so going way back to before any unfaithfulness and before I destroyed anything in our marriage, I'm all of a sudden seeing the woman that's the woman I wanted to marry. Where has she come back from? And not back as in we went back to where it was good. It was so much better. Everything was better. And that's weird. That's suspicious. Um, and I just kept thinking, well, maybe she's in a good mood, but it was sustained. It wasn't a mood. It was sustained um, through really hard stuff at home, like really hard, thinking your kid's going to die, sleeping in shifts to watch over your child. Um, and then, my daughter ended up getting amazing help. And so then we're all really joyful, but my wife is remaining joyful. My wife is remaining, she still wants to spend time with me. Um, Bills still have to be paid, but my wife is my partner again. It's the person I wanted to marry, to the point where we've been married 22 years now, and I love this woman so much more than I ever did. And that didn't than I did, so much more than I ever did. Not more than I ever could. I don't know how to say it. The woman that I'm married to now, I would have married way sooner. And I think I waited 6 months before I asked her to marry me. And then we waited 6 more months to be responsible to get married, because that's ridiculous. You're young and you don't know who you are. This is terrible advice. Don't do that. I would never tell my daughters who are now 20 and 18. I would never say, "Oh, as long as you've known them for 6 months, it's cool. Propose." Um, that's that's bad advice for most people. If I met this woman, I wouldn't waste no time. This woman that I'm married to today is better than the woman that I married. The better than the fiance I had, and she's more fun, which is weird because life is still really hard, and there's still bills. Um, and we both have jobs and we work, but we can't wait to see each other, and it's so different. And I don't know why. I don't know what happened or why. So, and I say that meaning um I genuinely have soul searched and thought, what changes did I make? And I don't know if I made very many, if any, which means that she changed somehow. Or maybe I changed, but I don't know. I like to be around her more, so I am around her more. So maybe that's a change, but it wasn't a disciplined change. It wasn't putting it on the calendar for date night. It wasn't some change or accountability that I had that I said, "Oh, I'm going to do this better." Which is wild because my relationship with her is 1,000 times better than it was our entire marriage. And we're both extremely happy and joyful, and things haven't outwardly changed. I mean, like outwardly, our kids are still 18 and 20. They are still our kids, even if they're adults that just drink all of our coffee and eat all of our food. They drink so much coffee, Laura. You don't, I don't know if you have kids. They drink so much coffee. They don't need it, but they drink it. And it's mine. And they drink my coffee. And my point is that I don't understand how everything's still hard and my wife is nicer to me. And I didn't do anything major to change any. I couldn't identify the changes that I made. And I really have thought about it. But my wife is nice to me. That sounds so rude, like she wasn't nice to me before. She had every reason not to be nice to me because of what I've done in my life. But she was still nice to me after that. And we tried to work on our marriage and we went to therapists and we spent years trying to work through things, and all of that is very valuable. If you have a major crisis in your life, sometimes you just need an absolute professional to somehow help you, especially if you've got a ton of baggage from your past that you don't know about. So all of that was very helpful, but it didn't bring joy. It brought some healing and a pathway forward, but it didn't bring joy. And all of a sudden, I have this wife that's joyful and nice to me. And when I say nice to me, like she even comes in the door and says nice things to me. Like after work, she has a super boring day job and hates it. And I probably shouldn't say that. We're thankful for it. But it's very hard. It's very hard. And she comes in the door because she's a very creative person and she feels stifled. And it's very hard. So, but she comes in the door after a long day at work and she gets up early in the morning to go there and she comes in the door and she's nice to me immediately. She doesn't sit down and say, "Oh, I need this first, or I need to do this." She's nice to me immediately. And what's weird is somehow I find myself preparing for her to come home. I'm cleaning things, probably still incorrectly. I'm doing things, but she doesn't say that. In fact, the towels are whatever they are, folded or folded the wrong way, and there's just not an argument about it anymore. And it's done. And I found myself cleaning the kitchen this weekend, which I probably did terrible at that too, but she didn't say anything. And I washed the laundry, and yeah, sometimes everything comes out peak. But I wash the laundry sometimes and I do my best at that and I try to clean up after myself. I've even been picking up my shoes. I'm 44. I've never been a clean person. And for whatever reason, I'm trying now. What is going on? And I don't know. I couldn't put my finger on it. I am excited about life with her. I can't stop thinking about our future. Somebody said we're going to have more time on our hands because our kids moved out or are moving. No, they're not. And I'm never going to have more time. I don't buy all that stuff. They're just here for my coffee. But I'm just saying that I don't understand the changes that have happened. She was miserable.
And you were miserable.
Yeah, I definitely thought I made her that way.
Mhm.
But I can't see what I changed, and she's not miserable anymore. And so that's weird because that means the control and the power to change our relationship was somehow in her hands, regardless of how stupid and careless I was, and regardless of all the healing and effort we put into growing through that really hard time. Somehow the power was in her hands to completely influence how our relationship turned out. And that I would have told her if I knew that. I would have said, hey, you just have to do this, this, and this. I don't think that would have gone well. But I genuinely, I didn't know that she had the power to impact our relationship this much. She has completely changed the dynamics of our relationship, and it has changed how I show up. And that's weird. That's that's something suspicious. So she changed who she was, and I don't know how, and I don't know what she did differently, but it changed who I was. And now the way I show up is like before we were married, like with the excitement of, I still remember being so excited to be married because I didn't have to say goodbye anymore. Like at the end of the date or whatever, we didn't live together before we were married. So we would, every date would end, and I'd be like, well, that sucks. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want this to end. And then you just can't think about getting back together again. Like I want tomorrow to be here so that I can go out with this girl again. And I feel like that again. Like it's past noon here on the East Coast, and I want her to come home from work. I'm ready for her to come home and just be near me. And I don't need anything, and I don't want anything from her. I don't want anything from her but to be near her because I really like her.
Oh,
Not love her. I actually like her. I love her too. Don't okay. But I really, really like her. Like I feel like a kid, like talking to you, like this girl that I met is so cool. And I want to tell you all about her. And that's so wild because even 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, marriage is hard. Of course it is. And I still believe marriage can still be really hard. It's just like parenting children. It's really hard sometimes. But my wife did something, and she had the power to show up differently. And when she showed up differently, it it changed the whole dynamics of our marriage, where I showed up differently, and I'm not like, so can you take me out? When are we going out? We haven't been out in a long time. It's so
gosh.
different than I want to spend time with you. So I don't feel like a failure when my wife talks to me. I feel wanted, and it makes me work harder. It makes me do more. And that's suspicious.
And
So,
it sounds like you feel successful as a husband now
oh, it's
too.
wild. I feel like I'm doing stuff right, and I don't think I am. That's the weird thing. I just folded the towels the other night, and they don't match the ones she folded. So I'm not doing it right. Something has changed in her to where she's somehow okay with me showing up as a failure on a lot of levels. And I'm not self-disparaging. I'm saying like that inevitably when two people live together for 22 years, you're going to realize that person cannot make you happy. I cannot make my wife happy. And I was exhausted trying to show up to make her happy. Exhausted because I broke it. I felt compelled to fix it. And I can't make my wife happy. Not now, not then, not ever. Something she had to unlock inside of her, she did. And now she shows up in a way where I can somehow contribute excessively to her happiness. And now I contribute to her happiness and can make things even better, but she doesn't depend on me for that. She's a happy person when she walks through the door, no matter how miserable her day is. Like she's discovered joy, like actual joy. And that's completely changed the dynamics of our relationship. And for the better, for sure. But I don't think I changed very much, which is That means that she had the power to make significant changes in her life, in attitude and in communication and in the way that she showed up, that actually led to a sustainable, lasting change. Like, she's not faking it. You can fake something for quite a while. You can fake happiness, you can fake contentment, but eventually it creeps in and you go, I don't like where we are. And she's not faking it. So that's pretty significant. Something significant, a significant shift inside happened, and all of the sudden I felt supported instead of contributing to the just a black hole of not ever being enough. And I went from not being enough to somehow the stuff I'm doing is somehow remarkably okay. In my perspective, because I'm not showing up great. Somehow I'm showing up and it is, but I want to be great now. And that is different. I want to be great and do even more. When before, listen, if you get told that you didn't load the dishwasher right, men are pretty smart. We're just not going to load the dishwasher again. And now you have all of that. And if we get told we're not doing this other thing right, well, it's yours too. My wife was probably doing 10,000 things before because I gave them all back to her. Fine, you want this too? It's yours. Um, and now I get to help out, and it works. It really works. So it sounds goofy to be like, I'm a hero of towel folding and doing the dishes, but it makes me want to go to work more. It makes me want to do more. It makes me want to show up when I walk through the door. I don't want to be in a bad mood. I'm going to show up and say hi first thing instead of go sulk or whatever I would do, whatever negative, I don't know. And it's not false positivity. It wasn't like, oh, just shift your outlook and pretend that things are good and eventually they will be good. Because there's a lot of fake it till you make it. And this isn't that. She tried on some communication styles and she tried on some internal attitude adjustments and she confronted some things in her that I still don't know about. And completely changed the dynamics of our marriage to be enjoyable, like pre-marriage enjoyable. Like, I'm so excited. And oddly, more attracted to her physically, which is wild. She was already physically attracted, and I'm not going to talk to you about that. So all I'm saying is that she became more attractive. And my kids are like, gross, gross, you guys go away. And I love that after 22 years of marriage to be told to go away. So I'll take it. That is a win too. So she is more attractive to me than ever, but in every way. So that's
I
wild.
mean, the way you talk about her is the way every woman wants her husband to feel, right? Like, I'm so excited about this girl. Let me tell you about this
Yeah,
girl.
yeah.
And my kids are like, "Ooh, gross,"
They
because
hate it.
I can't keep my hands off of her.
It's true.
And
They hate it.
everybody wants
Yeah.
this. So, I mean, you see your story, I can't help but hear um like, well, there's a miracle. First of all, there's redemption. There's
Yeah.
redemption in your story. You are the hero again. You're
Mm.
the hero of your family. And it didn't seem like that was going to be possible at one
No,
time.
it definitely didn't. No,
And
when you fall from grace and do such stupid, foolish, selfish things with no excuse, it's not like, oh, I didn't know that would turn out that
no,
way. You know, I
no,
made
it's not about that.
terrible choices, terrible
Uh,
choices. And I always believe people need second chances, but more, not just second chances. People are broken and they need healing. And we'll just break ourselves again. And so we need more healing. So it's not like oh, you get one chance and then you're all better. Um, yeah, we went through it and it was miserable for a long time. Uh, Natural consequences of bad choices. But being so, we tried tons of things and they were all like little stepping stones to make some other things better. But the shifts, the major shifts that happened in her didn't come from therapy and didn't come from just good friendships, which I think half of us need therapy and the other half need really good friendships. And so normally that is enough to make it through. She made some massive internal shifts and I can't identify them, which is probably better for me as a husband. Because if I see a formula working, I'm suspicious of what that formula is and worried that I'm being manipulated. And I don't like manipulation. I can smell it a mile away. If I think my wife is saying something to get me to respond a certain way, I'm going to do the opposite to prove that's how arrogant and dumb I am. I will prove that what you're doing isn't working on me. And this wasn't that. No, it
So
really wasn't that.
no,
Like
no, but
if I thought that she was just choosing words to make me do things a certain way, I would be that's rude. That's not an honest
that's rude. That's
it's
right.
not an honest relationship.
But
But instead, she
at
shows up
first,
completely
you did,
honest, and it works. So
but you said you used the word suspicious, which
yeah,
is so you did kind of think maybe there's some manipulation going on
sure,
here at first, right? Like, let's
sure,
go back to the laundry room situation for a
yeah.
second. I mean, that's when
Yeah, she
you,
was super nice to me. She showed up and was like, "Wow, this is going to look great when it's done." Mm, you don't
it,
have a comment on the color? Like to her, there's 700 shades of blue. To me,
right, right.
there
There's
is
just
dark
blue.
blue and light blue, and I
Okay.
chose
Oh, there's
light
two.
blue, right? And
Uh-huh.
so
Uh-huh.
she didn't have a comment on it, which is great, which made
Wow.
me think I chose the right color.
So if
But
you
the
got all the
chances of
way,
that aren't really that good. And
if
then
you
when it
got,
was coming together, she was even more excited. But it
did,
wasn't manipulation. She wasn't pretending to like the laundry room either. She actually really, I think it's believable.
it's
It,
believable. Yeah.
it's been years and she still likes it. So I don't think she's faking it. It doesn't
And it's,
mean that there's things in there she wouldn't want to change. I'm sure there's things in there she would change. I believe that. Um, she's never said them to me if there are.
wow.
So that's significantly different than how we would approach projects together.
And
Um,
you finished the laundry room, just
I
for the record.
did.
You finished the laundry room.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
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 So I mean, I love this. And I love hearing that there's joy. That's a big deal because
Yeah.
this is why we got married, right? This is why we all got married, is because it was such a joyful experience to
Well,
be.
you're like, this person completes this person I can't live without.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
feeling somehow went away. When you listen, when you have kids, it's hard and they're
Oh
young and
yeah. Oh
who you
yeah.
are. And my
Yeah.
wife's like, I mean, I'm sure my wife didn't even like who she was becoming. Actually, I'm positive. My wife was like, I crave adult conversations. I don't want to talk to 4-year-olds all day. And
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
understand. That's a very different stage of life. And we change because of that.
Sure.
But the joy is back. The person I married. And it wasn't like a weird return to, oh, I'm just going to act like I did before I was married and pretend I don't have kids. And no, our kids are extremely supported and loved and still a massive part of our life. But the way we're finding time for each other to show up emotionally is completely different. And that's changed how we show up for each other in every other way. And I
I
don't
mean,
loathe it, and it's not a discipline, and I can't wait to see her again. And that's completely different than several years ago. Yeah,
wow.
completely different.
So inspiring. This is so inspiring to get to hear what 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 the two of you have accomplished, you know. And it's you're so sweet. You know, you give your it sounds like you give your wife all the credit, really, for
Well, I
it.
can't think of
And
how I changed.
I,
That's the,
I know.
no,
I,
I mean, like she showed up different, and that somehow made things different.
but you are showing
If
up
I could
different.
tell guys what to do to fix it, I would just tell them. I'd be like, listen, stop being an idiot and start doing this. And I can't think of those things. Like if I tell my guy friends, oh, well, the key is to help out more at home or hey guys, fix your laundry room. It's going to change your whole life. Man, if I believe that, that's all I would be telling every guy. I'd just stand outside Home Depot and be like, free marriage, fix your laundry room. Your whole life is going to be better. Light blue.
Yeah.
So that's not it. I
That
can't
wasn't
figure out
it.
what happened.
Wow.
So
And how do you think? has this impacted your daughters, your two kids, you think?
Yeah. So, every parent has to figure out when to tell their kids the truth, like the whole truth, like the bad truth, that your parents are total screw ups on this level and this level.
Mhm.
And then you need to be wise about that because if they're little and they don't even know what love or sex is, you're not going to tell them what happened. You're going to tell them in some very simple, childish way, hey, your dad fell in love with some other woman and did some terrible things, and we are going to move to your grandparents' house. And then your kid's like, oh man, okay. But they're like little, they're like 5 and 3. They don't know what that is. You can't live on that tiny truth, right? The whole truth has to come up. So as we're raising them, we had to be wise and find ways to tell them, hey, you want to know how bad it really was? Not like as like a well, this will be fun to tell our kids, but in an intentional way so that your kids don't wake up one day and go, we were lied to. We were completely lied to. So having our kids know the whole truth is really important, and that's important. They watched there's I promise you they felt the tension in the house. I'm talking for a decade after. Like and I'm not just talking from unfaithfulness. I'm talking about the tension of just a relationship in a marriage. Whether you've had unfaithfulness in your marriage or not, your kids, they know when you're stressed out. They know when you're mad. They know why your answers are shorter. They know why your tone is your tone. I don't have a tone. You know, the
Yeah.
things that like the dads, right? They know the kids sense all that. And my kids are super sensitive because they're who they are, but they're aware of all of those things and they have seen a change. And I know, look, they're smart kids, very smart kids. I know they were suspicious too, because my wife started encouraging them the way that she started encouraging me. And I think it changed who they became. Like these were super formative years, teenagers, 15 to 18 are moving into identity formation in ways that are lasting, but also really important. So I'm not just a product of my parents anymore. I believe this now. So they see their mom go through this massive shift of my dad's not good enough. I don't think they thought that. I don't know what they thought. That'd be an interesting conversation. Well, I wonder what they perceived. But I definitely felt like I was never good enough. I'm sure they sensed some of that. And then now they see us just excited about life, even though it's still hard. Um, and they saw their mom make these changes, and joy return, and humor and laughter fills the house. And it's wild. That's wild. Like I bet our daughter saw that and thought, huh, dad must be doing something right now. And I'm not. I don't think I am. The towels look the same. Uh, I might be
I don't
finishing
know.
more projects, but I don't, it's not a significant change. I still have all the same weird faults of starting things and not finishing them. I still struggle with the same things that I would have struggled with before. I think my daughters just see this marriage as very different now. And I bet they think that I finally figured it out. The laundry,
Well, I mean,
the
it must
laundry
feel
room
so
and the
good
one.
to.
No. So I bet they think that I got better, which is wild. I don't know if that happened at all. So
You're very self-deprecating, you're very, very humble. But how great for your daughters to yeah, feel to see their dad as a success. And because you feel like a success and
I
you are a
do. I
success. You
really
are a
do.
success.
I
Right? So,
I somehow feel like some things are working.
yeah,
Don't break.
some
It
things are
felt
right.
super fragile at first. I remember thinking, don't screw this up.
Yeah.
But then when I couldn't identify what I wasn't doing or was doing, I didn't know. Okay, well, that means the power isn't really for me to screw up, um, because it didn't get screwed up, but I didn't do anything. So that's really what's wild is that I definitely felt fragile. Like, oh, maybe I have to start another project and Did the laundry room actually make her happy? And I don't think the answer is yes. I don't think the laundry room mattered at all. I don't think she thought, oh man, he built me a laundry room and my life has changed. Not at all.
Well,
And that's
but
the
there,
reality, is that it wasn't fragile. It didn't create more work for me. It wasn't, I wasn't responsible for my wife's happiness in the same way that I wasn't responsible for my wife's happiness before. I can contribute to it, and I can effectively engage in it, and I can encourage it, and I can be a part of it, but it has to come from something in her. And whatever she was doing changed that. And my kids saw that. And I bet you they have experienced two different mothers from that, from she was never hard on them. Meaning, like, we're not the type of parents who are like, oh my gosh, you left a sock on the floor. Like, their rooms are their space. That's
sure.
disgusting. That's where all the coffee cups are. I know that. That's where they are. When I run out of coffee cups, they're in her room. So I know that I can just, but so it's not like my wife shifted from, I used to make them do a bunch of chores to now I don't. Not those weird external shifts that you can identify. An internal shift of, my mom is joyful again. My mom is, she likes me. I bet you they feel incredibly liked by their mom. And that is, she's always loved them well. Oh
Oh,
my God.
sure,
And
sure,
sacrificed everything for them and gave up
sure.
career and changed her entire life around these kids. And for the years we were just trying to keep our daughter alive, for the years of that, my wife sacrificed so much. So you have to understand, love wasn't the issue at all.
Never,
Bet
never.
you that they feel completely enjoyed. I mean, enjoyed by their mom.
Oh,
My wife enjoys our children, and I think she enjoys me, and that's cool. That's
oh, it's cool.
that's the coolest. Yeah, yeah, that's a big one. Yeah,
That is awesome. This is what everybody wants. You have what everybody wants. So, and what is your tip for a woman who maybe is where you guys were? Maybe there's a fresh infidelity and it
yeah,
seems so dark, and there's financial strain and kid strain and
yeah, yeah.
everything. And she wants what you guys have now. She wants
Okay,
her
yeah.
husband to
Well,
say, like,
this
I
okay.
like my wife.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't wait to spend time with her.
yeah.
What's your
Okay,
tip
so the
for her?
truth is, it's probably somebody's fault, but we have to move past that. Probably it's both of your faults, but even if you can't get there and it's all his fault and he's terrible, and he might be, I'm not saying he's not, he might be the worst. I mean, the worst. Uh, I was that. And so there's some hope. There's hope. Don't move too fast, because it's you have every right to. You have every right to be safe. I want you to be safe. But that idiot can somehow change, and there is hope, and it might not be fast. Oh, it might be miserable. You might get your heart broken again. I'm not saying do it. I don't know. I have no idea if you should stay with that man. I have no idea. But I have seen the worst in a marriage go through absolute healing to where it's better than it ever was before. And it wasn't fast at all. And it was so hard. But what I've heard is that it's really hard the other way too. Because life is hard whether you get a divorce or figure things out. Life is really hard whether your kids are healthy or your kids are sick. Life is really hard whether you have a ton of money or not very much money. So if you feel completely broken and abandoned and betrayed, it's really hard. And I'm not just a pessimist, and I meant that. Um, it's going to get worse before it gets worse. Yeah. But then it actually will get better. And I'm not like saying, oh, everything heals over time. No, it doesn't. Sometimes people die and leave you feeling completely abandoned and betrayed. and life can be so hard. But there's actual hope and steps that people can do and things that can bring light into darkness and hope into completely hopeless situations. And I don't use the term redemption lightly, but being redeemed and finding complete soul change, when that happens, the old is gone and the new has come, and you can have actual hope again. And I don't know the pathway forward. It might be with somebody completely different. But how you show up, women, how you show up is probably the only thing that you can control anyway. If your husband's untrustworthy, I don't know if you can change that. And I don't even know if he can right away. Like, that's really hard, and I'm sorry. But you can change how you show up. And I don't know how. I don't know how. But I do believe that there is hope in the most hopeless situations because I'm living proof of that. Like, and I do believe there's redemption, and I do believe the worst people can actually change. They can. I'm not saying they will, but they can. Um, but how you show up and what you can actually control, somehow that completely changed the dynamics of my marriage. Um, I obviously still had to go and do a lot of work myself, but I have never wanted to work on myself more ever than I do right now
Mhm.
because I love this woman and I want to be even better than I am right now. And so if you're going through it and it's terrible, it could get so much worse. But it's hard if you do this one thing, and it's hard if you do this other thing. So if it's hard either way, then you don't have to rush into the next hard thing. You can slow down. You don't have to rush into divorce, and you don't have to rush into therapy. You can breathe. You can just breathe and you can say, is there hope? And I can't. There is hope. There is hope. I don't care where you are, there's hope because as long as there is a breath in a human, they have the ability to repent and turn from being really dumb into being healed. And so, if there's one breath left, they can say they're sorry and they can begin to change. So, that's what I believe. That's
Wow.
I don't think it's simple, and I don't mean to make it sound trite or to be like, oh, if you just wait longer, it'll get better. Nope, probably, maybe not. But it's hard the other way and it's hard this way, then choose the hard that ends in the most joy and the most healing and the most personal growth and one that leaves your family intact. And I'm not saying that there's no, oh man, I have to be super clear on this because people twist words all the time. There are definitely reasons why a woman needs to be safe and needs to get a divorce. And I'm not saying that, man, that is so hard. Marriage is so hard, but there is hope. Even if, oh man, even if you married a total narcissist and he's a big idiot and he doesn't know anything and he's ruining your life, yeah, I did all of that. And there's still hope. There's hope.
Wow. Amazing. I mean, from the horse's mouth. I mean, you're
Yeah,
so
no,
good
it's
to
so
put
true.
yourself in this, you know,
It's,
you're saying this was me.
oh,
And
manipulating and lying and just awful and arrogant and above reproach. As in,
but
like, if my best friends told me this is where you're headed and this is what's going to happen, I wouldn't have listened to them. That's
it,
wild.
and
That's extremely broken. That is
but
extremely broken.
but getting to know you over the last 45 minutes or whatever, it's like we see why your wife picked you and why she thinks you're wonderful and why she wants to spend more time with you.
I
And
have no
so, right? What's that? You what?
I I I don't see what she sees, but I feel like $1 million. And so
Yeah,
that's really cool. And it just makes me want to be $2 million. So
yeah,
it's really
yeah,
weird. But yeah,
yeah. You're on your way
yeah.
to being 2 million bucks now
Yeah.
because you're so inspired and in
I am.
love.
I'm inspired. I'm energized. I feel like what this woman in my household gives me energy. So I want to be around her because she's not draining and sucking the life out of me. me
Yeah.
and making me feel like I'm less. It's like I get charged up. I'm excited. So,
Yeah. 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 Well, you two are incredible beacons of hope for what's possible.
sure.
It's like ridiculously inspiring. And yeah, I'm just so grateful to get to hear the inside of what went on. It's so rare. Where do you hear all this in the world? You
Well, you
don't.
know what's terrible is when I do talk to other men, this story of our marriage is super common.
Oh, it
Like
is
it's
very
not,
common. It is
I
very
mean,
common.
men don't
That's
talk
right.
about it, but
Mhm.
unfaithfulness is rampant. And the more older folks we talk to, they're like, yeah, that happened to us too.
Yeah.
And oh, I
Yeah.
had no idea because, well, they're like, well, that's because it was 30 years ago or whatever,
You're not alone. You're
Not
not
at
alone.
all. Not
Not
at
at all
all. So
alone.
people that think
No.
they're stuck or suffering, just about everybody's felt that. So,
Yeah. And I think in some circles, there's this idea that it is a deal breaker, like it has to be the end of the marriage.
and it might be. There are deal breakers. Deal breakers are real. I don't know what they are. They're different for every
Well, me
person.
neither. Me
But if
neither.
you say this is your deal breaker, it might be. But then when it happens, you might need to reevaluate that.
It's
Yeah.
so, yeah,
People ask
exactly.
me, yeah, people ask me all the time, well, what if it was the other way around? And I'm like, oh, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no
No
idea.
idea.
Well, I used to
Yeah.
have an idea. I mean, like I
Yeah.
used to be like, that's a total deal breaker.
That's
Or
a deal breaker.
you can't
Yeah. Yeah.
recover from
Yeah.
that. You
Yeah. You
cannot
can't
recover
recover.
from that. And now I'm like, oh, I don't know. Move slowly. Pray.
So if
Seek
you were to go back
wisdom.
in
Yeah.
time and talk to your old self, you'd say, actually, you can totally recover from it.
I yeah, I had no idea. Because and I would also say when you're in it, you think yours is worse than anybody else's. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
well, they might know what they went through, but they don't know what I went through. And that's also true. I don't know what you're going through, but there is still hope. And the things that were deal breakers before, just move slowly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Farron. This has been amazing. What an incredible contribution to the mission to end world divorce. This has been you coming on and sharing so authentically, so honestly, so vulnerably with us. Just makes my day. Thank you
No,
so much.
sure.
Have you fixed a problem in your marriage, big or small, using the six intimacy skills? If so, I would love to hear all about it and have you as a guest on the Empowered Wife podcast. If you're willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce and pay it forward by inspiring other women with your story, go to lauradoyle.org slash podcast dash guest. That's lauradoyle.org slash podcast dash guest. And let me know that you're willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce. I can't wait to meet you. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. On next week's podcast, I'm going to share the top 5 keys to a successful marriage. And in the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that according to this BMI chart I got, I'm just a little too short.